World Studies team at Da Vinci Charter Academy meets to plan for an upcoming project. World Civilizations teacher Scott Stephen Bell meets with English teachers Emma Gist and Tyler Millsap to lay the groundwork for the school's annual World War I Museum Night. They must discuss the project's driving question, launching the project, logistical needs, and the big night. Further, they need to clarify how the project will be taught between their World Civilizations and English 10 courses.
Okay, so a couple things. Emma, you're new to the World Studies team, and
Yes.
we have discussed World War I night before, but it's good to go over the stuff in detail. The driving question, I think we could revisit. How can a World War I Museum of Remembrance capture the causes and consequences of World War I and reflect how national and international policies affected human lives, psyches, and the social, cultural, and political developments of the world?
Does the driving question always have to incorporate the project in the driving? Like, could the driving question be how did war affect these people, and we're using the project to answer that question? That's something I'm not quite sure about, as far like being new to PBL, the workings of that.
I think that it's always a good idea for the driving question to specify the product or the outcome.
Okay.
One thing I'm hoping we get out of our next thing is the field trip.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go, the more I thought about museum design. When you go into a museum, you go into a room, and quite often that room captures a whole theme, right?
Right.
So I was thinking this year of, instead of having, and we've been playing with this over the years, instead of having France right next to Prussia and right next to Great Britain,
Mm-hmm.
having a thematic room. So they choose a theme or topic. We try to give them this idea of,
Okay.
I give them this list so they can start going over, and I try to start guiding teams towards what are your strengths, what are things that interest you, what might you want to tackle. We launch on the 26th, and we'll have the first week where we're going to bring back propaganda, because we've been talking about it throughout the year. Geography, getting them just sort of background. I start giving them World War I background. And that'll lead us right to Monday, where we're taking the field trip to the museum.
So what are you hoping that the students get from the field trip to the museum?
I think it's going to be good for them to see the inside of the museum. My favorite part about this field trip is that it's not like we're just going to a museum, but we're getting like an insider's, this is our thinking behind what we do at the museum. So I think that that's going to be key, because it's that flipping of your thinking, right? Like the difference between reading a book and writing a book. They're two very different things. So I think that that's going to be really, really valuable for them.
Do you know what you're gonna, like, what strategy you're gonna use to make teams?
I was going to use your idea of making a form for team choice. If Emma wants me, I have to sign off on Emma's form. She has to sign off on my form. Then they can list 3 dream people they would love, and then they can put 2 people with whom they might have concerns about whom they would or would not want to work to help guide our choices. So on the English side.
So we're going to read All Quiet on the Western Front, and I think the idea there is that because it's a story about German soldiers and their personal experience in World War I, it addresses that part of the driving question about lives and psyches. It kind of adds to their understanding of that. So if we pick the night that we're going to have the presentations, that we're going to host the museum.
Yes. The night that we're hosting the museum is, these dates are wrong, Thursday, the 5th of March. This one's fun, and they've been very serious on this one. No, but just the whole thing, this unit brings it together.
Yeah.
It is big, it is bold, it is exciting, it's long.
World Civilizations teacher Scott Stephen Bell is launching World War I Museum Night, the largest sophomore project of the year. He will use videos from the past years and an entry document to create engagement and curiosity about the content and skills he wants students to learn during the course of the project.
World War I night starts today. You've downloaded and opened up 2 documents that we're going to be referring to today. We're going to watch 2 short videos 2 students made to sort of reflect their thoughts and experience about World War I Museum Night. With your teams, with your tables, What did you just see? What are some thoughts and images besides the typo, which I hope you caught? What did you guys just see? What are some things you saw? What are some things you saw? Chip, some propaganda? PCC?
Examples of exhibits.
Examples of exhibits, right?
Entry documents can take many forms. In this example, Mr. Bell challenges students to complete the project by presenting them with a letter soliciting high-quality World War I exhibits. This creates context, relevance, and inquiry to move forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, the National World War I Museum, in conjunction with Da Vinci High School, presents, in early 1914, and you can join me up here or join me on your paper, war was romantic. War was colorful flags, spiked helmets, and flashing sabers.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the guns went quiet. After the fighting ceased and the huge celebrations had died down, concerned citizens in the United States reflected on the Great War and the losses sustained. What could be done?
Sincerely, Brian Alexander, President and Chief Executive Officer, and Eli Paul, Vice President of Museum Programs. Ladies and gentlemen, taking your pens, pencils, and or highlighters, I want you to read this through privately, highlight anything that you think is important, then you're going to have a discussion with your table mates about...
I have their CDs.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm guessing it's the Surely by Christmas is
Yeah.
important because how does that affect supplies?
Yeah.
And I think
Because if they
on the
only
11th
budgeted for more than
Yeah, yeah.
PCC, what did you guys come up with as important?
Well, that one date, and in honor of the century, in the century of the Great War, and the Christmas miracle, we are seeking exhibits to outline comprehensive displays of the war.
Who's coming to help us judge? Eli.
People from the National World War I Museum.
Yes, we are having museum experts come and judge you. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 week from today, which would be what?
February 2nd.
Yes, it's a Monday, exactly. You need to be in this classroom at 8 a.m. We're going to be arriving at the museum, the California Museum, at 9. They're going to have guest speakers come tell you how to build, work, operate, and think of a museum and a theme. Then you'll have time with your team to plan and get inspired and explore.
The Rural Studies team has organized a field trip to the nearby California History Museum. To add authenticity to their task of creating their own World War I museum, the students will meet with museum specialists in order to learn how to design and host museum exhibits. Then, using their newly acquired skills and existing museum exhibits, they will create and deliver an impromptu 7-minute long presentation. Amanda Meeker, Exhibits and Programs Director, speaks to students and highlights key principles of exhibit design.
Your exhibit is going to be stronger if you can come up with one overarching message that kind of covers your whole exhibit.
Alexandra Latona, Education and Volunteer Manager, informs students on how to be effective docents in a museum setting.
Top tips for a successful tour. Take charge, right? Your tour, your exhibit. You're going to direct people around. You can be nice about it, but you're in charge. Okay? You always want to introduce yourself. Okay? Tell them who you are. Tell them what you've been working on this whole time for. You want to be conversational, but you still want to be heard.
Next, students take to the museum floor and create an experience using an existing museum installation.
Excellent.
Oh,
wait, are we doing the whole thing? Or
No,
just...
you find one theme throughout it because tours don't involve the whole thing.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't use a...
No. Remember, it said like there are multiple themes in a museum exhibit, but the tour has one main focus. What? Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
This wall is.
Yeah.
First of all, welcome to our exhibit. My name is Natalie. So basically, as you can see, these are just a lot of women who have excelled exceptionally in sports.
They're mostly separated into boys and girls teams.
And also, as you can see here, there are a lot of variety of sports that women have played, from ice skating to tennis and also basketball.
So this is Jackie joining
here, Kiersey. She did this thing called heptathlons for the Olympics. Does anyone know what a heptathlon is? Do you guys know what a triathlon is? Okay, so think of a triathlon except with 7 events instead of only 3.
So right here we had Eddie Campbell, and she played for the Sacramento Monarchs, so women's basketball. So how many of you play basketball or have tried basketball, in PE, or just it's a sport of yours? That's a lot of people. That's great. So
in conclusion, pretty much the overlying theme is the fact that everyone, no matter your gender, and no matter your amount of money or whatever you have, everyone has this potential in them, and everyone just needs to strive and work hard.
Anyone have feedback for them? The questions are a great way to assess your audience's knowledge base already and explain things really well. Anyone else?
Your vocabulary was good.
Vocabulary, good main points, yes?
Good pacing. Nobody talked for too long. For fairly even division amongst all of you.
Finally, back at campus, the class debriefs the field trip.
Kind of same thing as Seth. You're surprised at how much precision goes into making an exhibit. Like 154 inches.
54.
4 inches up the wall is like the perfect high-level height.
Us was
to keep it clean and simple. She talks about that a lot, and it's really important.
The following examples, while not exhaustive, show key scaffolds for the Museum Night project.
So what is a scaffold? Much like a scaffold around a building, it's something that surrounds and helps support the greater structure. So a scaffold is a smaller assignment that should help build on a skill or idea that students are going to need as they work toward their final product or their end product in this case.
The idea of scaffolding and project-based learning is that the teacher or teachers considers the content and the skills that they want students to have in order to be successful in the final product or final presentation. And then they set about designing a series of lessons, both traditional and maybe non-traditional, that allows students to acquire those skills so that they're ready to put it together and do the final project in the end.
How did I go about scaffolding for World War I night? We started looking at what you would need to create an effective museum display, visited some museums and started asking questions about what effective museums use and what students would need in order to create a museum. So we started breaking that down into small parts based on skill and based on content so they could blend the two to figure out what it was they would need to create their ultimate design for the night.
In English 10, we read All Quiet on the Western Front. I think that it puts students in the experience of Paul the soldier, and it gives them a handhold and foothold on their way to understanding the historical significance of the Great War.
Mr. Bell begins scaffolding students by explaining essential historical content through the use of traditional lectures.
I want to introduce you to 2 people, ladies and gentlemen. 2 people. On the left of the picture, the Archduchess Sophie and her husband, the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. 2 people that you've probably never heard of. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, ladies and gentlemen. They are a married couple. He is the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. That means he's going to inherit from his uncles. Now, he did not grow up expecting to inherit a large empire, but this is it. This man and his gun have just changed the world.
Students are given a piece of World War I propaganda and are asked to analyze its historic meaning and its use of persuasive techniques.
So this piece of propaganda, it is 2 ladies and or 2 women and a young child standing in what appears to be like a house or a room in front of a window, watching men go off to war. And it reads, "Women of Britain say go."
In this propaganda, the techniques are used to exploit existing beliefs and patriotism. It shows exploit existing beliefs because it tells the women that it's their job to tell the men to go to war, and it tells also the men that it's their duty to go to war.
Basically, we were just analyzing a piece of propaganda from World War I time period, and we were saying what the techniques used in the propaganda were, who it was directed towards, and the general message of the propaganda.
I did the scaffold to help me understand how difficult propagandas can be, so we can make our propaganda in World War One night easier so everybody else can understand.
It was to help us sort of understand the propaganda from that time period a little bit better, because during World War One night we're going to have made one of our own and be able to present it.
Each team is tasked with choosing a focus for their museum exhibit, also known as a P-plan. The following team is in the process of deciding how they will depict medical technology inventions of World War I.
But the goal of this is to dream big, because right now is the time for you to plan. It's to think. It's to be big.
For like 5 hours.
So we decided
we should
have
to talk to
we should have like the way the medical layout had like during the war.
Oh yeah,
so
we have that image.
Yeah,
of
right there.
The medical layout.
Should go from like the stretcher bearers to like the medical.
So what if our exhibit, instead of being like information, is like actually walking them through those steps? Like.
So the PEA is the primary exhibit artifact, and that's what we're going to include in our exhibit during World War I night.
The things that our team is focusing on for the PEA plan is there are 3 medical inventions that we're going to be including, which is a stretcher bear, an X-ray or a mobile X-ray machine, and the exit, which will be a train door.
An integral component of each team's exhibit is the photo essay. The photo essay combines multimedia and historical research to show visitors how the team's focus area fits within the larger context of the war.
Okay, so basically our idea is to sort of, as we're doing right now, like talk about sort of like the build up to the war, like the trenches and stuff, but really just brush over that because we'll go more in depth in our presentation, and then sort of talk about how like the technology really influenced the war. So we're going to talk a lot about the buildings of the first airplanes and the first boats, and then really what our main focus is French medicine. So we're going to do a lot about Marie Curie, and here is her in her mobile X-ray machines that she built.
As the class reads All Quiet on the Western Front, a novel that reflects the personal experience of a German soldier in World War I, students participate in weekly collaborative discussions to deepen their understanding of the literature. The connections they make between the literature and their historical exploration will be integrated into their World War I museum exhibits and discussed on the big night.
Last time I let you choose who was going to speak. Today I will choose. I'm going to choose somebody at your table, so make sure that everybody is ready. Okay?
First, students are assigned a specific question and are given several minutes to discuss the previous night's reading.
And he's finally starting to realize how this is senseless. I remember he says in here, oh yeah, like how senseless is everything that can ever be written, done, or thought when these such things are possible, when this type of death and destruction is possible.
I feel if people can just come murder each other and everything, then what value do other things in the world have?
Like when he was out on the front, he didn't really have time to think because there was all the shellings, and so that's all that he had to do. He couldn't think about what was actually happening.
When we say it, we're just gonna have to just
kind of summarize what we just said.
Then, the teacher selects students from each table to share out, taking the opportunity to deepen, challenge, and extend the class's thinking.
I'm going to switch gears and go to number 2 here and talk about this really, really famous incident between Paul and Gerard Duval. And if you've read this, it's heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching. It's very famous for that. So let's have Eli give us a summary of what happens here and what Paul must do to save his life. Let's have Samantha tell us why Paul decides that he must become a printer. And do you think he intends to do this? And then finally, Lilia, choose a quote that reveals Paul's anguish in this moment.
Okay, so to summarize what happens, Paul is on scouting duty, and so he leaves his trench and goes across to the enemy's trench to sort of see what is going on over there.
So Samantha, the printer.
Yeah. Okay. So the guy that he stabbed, Gerard, he was a printer, and so that Paul decides that he has to become a printer because he's like promising to live his life for Gerard, and so that.
Hello, my name is Ophir Saifan. My name is Claire Michael.
And I'm Connor Judd. And the poem we'll be showing to you today is For the Fallen by Lawrence Binion.
Student teams selected a poem from a World War I soldier and researched the author, analyzed the use of poetic devices, and explained its message, focusing on the author's portrayal of war.
With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirits, fallen in the cause of the free.
So the next one I'm going to talk about is personification. Personification is displayed in the sentence, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Now you can tell this is personification because England, as a country, cannot mourn. Mourning is a human action.
Summative, formative, traditional, non-traditional. All types of assessments can take place in a project. In the World War I Museum Night project, two important assessments are the World War I content test and, of course, the Museum Night presentation.
Clear off your desks, please. Please clear off all desks. Please clear off all desks. You may have pen or pencil. Just to let you guys know, there are 5 versions of the test.
In this traditional multiple-choice world history assessment, students must demonstrate the basic content they need to know in preparation for the big night. Now, World War I presentations. That's a little different. At the end of the 5 weeks, each team creates a full-size museum exhibit that is open to the public. Visitors will be guided through an engaging tour where they will learn about the group's focus area. The photo essay, propaganda, charts, maps, and other exhibit materials will form the basis of the museum booth. Student teams rehearse, practice, and refine their tours as the night progresses in anticipation of presenting to the panelists.
Lisa will talk to you about how we treated you, and Ella will talk to you about the same effective range and rifle and the same abilities. So it was essentially a rifle just shooting faster and a little bit.
Each student is responsible for explaining a certain portion of their exhibit, but must also be prepared to discuss World War I in its entirety.
That was really vital. Women would also go victory gardens because there was so much pressure on food during World War I that there was a lot of cutbacks. I know sugar was one of the bigger cutbacks, and a lot of people didn't have sugar. And so that's when sugar-free gum was invented. Well, interesting fact.
In order to assess all students, the World Studies team has invited parents, community members, and staff members to help with assessment. These panelists are divided up into 4 teams and are assigned several exhibits to assess. Each team is composed of an experienced humanities teacher and 3 other individuals during the 2-hour nighttime event. Panelists use a carefully designed rubric that includes different categories that students are graded on. For example, oral communication, critical thinking, and professionalism. The panelists provide an overall team assessment as well as an individual score. At the end of the student's presentation, panelists have the opportunity to ask questions to further assess the student's knowledge.
So can you tell me a little bit about the causes of World War I? What brought about this big, huge, gigantic war that lasted 4 years?
There are these 4 main huge causes. One of them was militarism.
Can you tell me about one of those instances that really showed realism or showed this negative tone that makes it so anti-war, like a specific
Yeah, there's some very gruesome parts of the novel, but one of the ones that I found the hardest to read was one where the horses that were helping the war, they were helping and holding down these different artilleries, and they were cut along the side with shrapnel, and their guts were falling out. And as the horses were in distress, they were running and trampled their own guts, and the soldiers
just couldn't help because it put the soldiers' lives in danger, so they couldn't help. And that was one of the most gruesome and horrible images.
At the end of the night, it is time to celebrate the excellent work that students put into their project. The World Studies teachers gather the students to praise their work and to recognize the winners of 3 types of awards: Public Choice determined by visitor voters, Teacher's Choice determined by teacher voters, and Best Exhibit within each individual section of World Civilizations as voted by the students.
Claire Michael can take and lead you through this Da Vinci tradition.
So we're going to be singing Smile, Smile, Smile.
You did it, Da Vinci!
At the end of the project, reflection is encouraged through a teacher-facilitated class debrief. Students share their likes, wonders, and areas of personal growth throughout the project, which gives the teachers feedback on what worked and what could be improved upon in the future.
I liked how much freedom we got in designing our exhibit. It had to be about our topic and it had to include certain elements, but we could make the theme and the design however we want.
I wonder if we could have a building contract not just with the teachers in the room and how we're using the room, but with the other groups, so that when people say they're going to build stuff or leave doors open for people, that can actually happen and there's like a written agreement.
One area that I really grew in was being able to lead my team, but also allow others to step in at certain points, and also to have a team where we were able to accomplish a lot, but also have fun in the process.
Okay, I really grew through learning about how a lot of the things we use today, technology-wise and medically, came in part through World War I.
After the project comes to an end, students are asked to reflect on each team member's collaboration throughout the project. Using an electronic rubric, each teammate evaluates the people they worked with. Each student's final grade will include an average collaboration score and written feedback.